Good morning, Morai Rabotai, Bruchim Abayim. We are continuing on Masechet Succah. We are on bottom of Daf Lamed Daled Amud Bet by the Mishnah, the second Mishnah in the Amud. Today's Amud is being learned as a Zchut Refuah Shelema for Rachel Simcha Bat Nahid, Michael Ben Nahid, Esther Bracha Bat Chaya. That should all have Refuah Shelema. Amen. This Amud is also being learned as a Ilui Neshama for Rachel Yafa Bat Nahid and for Shlomo Ben Yaakov, that their Neshamot should have an Aliyah Be'ezrat Hashem. Amen. So now we completed 3 out of 4 species, the Mishnayot, the past 3 Mishnayot, speaking about Lulav HaGazul, Hadas and Arava, and now we are continuing to the first one, really, kind of the order, as we explained, the beginning of the Perek does not follow the order of the Pasuk, but this is the perhaps most sophisticated of the Arba Minim, with the most psulim, with the most restrictions, is etrog. Now we have the Pasuk, Ulkachtem lachem beyom harishon peri etz hadar, which this whole Pasuk that speaks about the Arba Minim, first of which is etrog. We learn several different fundamental requirements for etrog. First is ulkachtem lachem, that it has to be yours. Now we spoke before that ulkachtem lachem means you have to own it, it can't be stolen, it has to be halachically belonging to you, so therefore you can't even borrow from somebody. It has to be at the very least matana al menat la'chazir. But we will see in our Mishnah that there are more halachot that we learn from lachem, that it has to also be allowed to be used completely, including the heter achila. You have to be able to eat it, actually, because it's not really mine if I can't eat it. It's a chisaron of ownership if I can't use it. So therefore, any etrog that cannot be used fully, including the heter of consumption, it will be also pasul because it's not lachem. So that would be a new aspect that we'll see in our Mishnah, especially explained in the Gemara. Most of the items in the Mishnah are going to be explained in Daf Lamed Hey. So that's ulkachtem lachem biyom harishon. Peri, we learned from peri that it has to be completely ripened. It can't be just in the beginning when it's not considered technically a fruit yet. It has to be nigmar peri, that we learned already. So that's the second thing that we learned from the pasuk in order to have a kasher etrog. So ulkachtem lachem peri etz hadar. Hadar is, of course, one of the main attributes of etrog is that it has to be hadar. It has to be beautiful, it has to be perfect. And this, the Ritba writes, is even categorically different than all the other species, even those who we learned that they should be hadar. By peri etz hadar, because it says it clearly in the pasuk, it's a bigger psul when it comes to etrog than even lulav and the other species. So these are several different things that we learn from the same pasuk of ulkachtem lachem beyom harishon peri etz hadar, and the Mishnah is going to discuss them one by one. So says the Mishnah, etrog hagazul va'yavesh pasul. This is obviously identical with the past 3 Mishnayot. If it is stolen, if it is dried, stolen, it's pasul because it's not yours. Yavesh is pasul because it is not hadar, it's not beautiful. Shel ashera ve'shel ira nidachat pasul, if it's an etrog of ashera or ira nidachat, if it's from a tree that was worshipped, or the etrog that was grown in ira nidachat, was already separated from the tree. It has to be, as the Gemara explains in Masechet Sanhedrin, when discussing the halachot of ira nidachat, which means a city, the majority of its inhabitants, they did avodah zarah, they became chayav mitah, and the entire city is going to be destroyed, including all of the booty that's inside, all the assets of the city is going to be destroyed as well. So Asherah ve'ir hanidachat, basically, they get the same halacha that they don't have katit michtat shiure. The Gemara says it doesn't have enough shiur because etrog has to have a minimum size, as we'll discuss, of a kabetza, like the Shita of Rabbi Yehuda, we'll see just in a moment. And Asherah ve'ir hanidachat, it's as if it's burnt already. So you see a little etrog over here, but the halacha sees a pile of ashes. So it's not kasher because it doesn't have shiur. So that's the gazul, yavesh, shel asherah v'shel hanidachat. So those are all the classic psulim, the four that is mentioned by all of the arba minim. Now the new ones that pertain really to etrog, which we haven't had before, is shel orla pasul. An etrog of orla is pasul. When you plant a tree, and this is not just in Eretz Yisrael, even in Chutz La'aretz, this is applicable. If you plant a tree, within the first 3 years, if it bears fruits, those fruits are not edible. It's asur ba'achila, it's asur ba'hana'ah. You cannot benefit from them, you cannot sell them, you cannot feed them to the animals. It's asur ba'achila, it is also asur b'hana'ah. So therefore, because it's not edible for you, because it's not lachem, it will be pasul. As we mentioned, in order for the etrog to be kasher, it has to be lachem in a way that is mine, that I could eat it. That's part of ownership, is that I actually could benefit from it, eat it, and here it's not included in that because you cannot eat it. V'shel terumat teme'ah pasul. By the way, the Ritba, for instance, writes that the orla, it also has to be burned, whatever, that doesn't have the shiur. So that's Rashi, the Machloket Rishonim, exactly how to teach this, how to explain it. But nevertheless, terumat teme'ah pasul. A terumah that became tameh, also you cannot eat it anymore. It has to be burnt. So it says the Mishnah, that also is pasul because it's not lachem. Shel terumah teorah lo yitol ve'im natal kasher. A terumah tehorah is edible for kohanim, so you shouldn't take it. But if you took it, it's kasher. Now the Gemara is going to explain this more, but it's also a machloket rishonim whether or not it's only kasher for the kohen, who also could eat it, because me and you cannot eat terumah tehorah. A non-kohen cannot eat terumah tehorah. So is it only kasher for the person that could eat it, or do we say that as long as somebody could eat it, like I could give it to someone that could eat it, so that would be still considered lachem because it has heter achila. So that becomes a little bit of a debate in the medieval authorities of Rishonim. But nevertheless, shel demai bet shamai poslin ubet hilel machshirin. For demai also, demai is a tvuah, a produce that you bought from Am Haaretz, and because the person you bought it from is an ignorant, not necessarily very careful in the halachot of separating the trumot to masrot, even though the Gemara says rova me'ares are me'asrin and so on, it's a questionable produce because we don't know if the trumot to masrot have been properly halachically taken off and tied, and therefore you can't eat it without fixing it. That's demai. And so, therefore, Bet Shammai says because you can't eat it lemaaseh, even though that could be fixed, because now you cannot eat it without a fix, it's not considered lachem. It's not considered lachem. You can't take it as a etrog for your lulav and etrog. Now we'll see in the Gemara why Bet Hillel would debate this, but it becomes the machloket Bet Hillel and Bet Shammai. Bet Shammai say you cannot use it. Bet Hillel say you can, and that's the machloket shel maaser sheni. If you have a etrog of maaser sheni, right? So what is maaser sheni? You have every year when you have your produce, you first have to, of course, take terumah and maaser rishon. Terumah is Midoraita, even 1 grain. Midrabanan tere mimea. Teruma, it's 2%. Right? Tere mimea, that's what you take. Again, you have ayin yafeh, the generous people would take 1/40th. The regular average would be 1/50th, which is 2%, and the stingy people would do 1/60, right? So that's the teruma, and then maaser, of course, is 1/10. The maaser rishon that you would take would go to leviim, and then from what's left you would take a maaser sheni, a second maaser. Whereas maaser rishon you have to give to the leviim. Maaser sheni you keep for yourself. Now, in the 3rd and the 6th year, the second tithes that you take is not maaser sheni, it's called maaser ani. It goes to the aniyim. Right? In the 1st, 2nd, and 4th year, that would be, and 5th year, that would be yours. So that would be maaser sheni versus maaser ani in those 2 years. So maaser sheni, the halacha is you cannot eat it where you are. You have to go to Yerushalayim. You take maaser sheni, you schlep it to Yerushalayim. If you can't schlep it, you will be mechalel. You would transfer the kedusha of those fruits on money. You take the sarta kesef biadecha. You take the money to Yerushalayim. You shop for food in Yerushalayim with that money, and you eat in Yerushalayim. Right? So that's maaser sheni. Now, if I have a beautiful etrog of maaser sheni, and I am not in Yerushalayim, I'm outside of Yerushalayim, can I use that for my arba minim? Says the Mishnah, you can't. Can't do it because you can't eat it. It's now maaser sheni. I wasn't mechalel this, so it's maaser sheni. It's not in Yerushalayim, so I cannot eat this right now here. Therefore, I can't use it as my arba minim. So shel maaser sheni birushalayim. If I took it already to Yerushalayim, which is where I could eat it, lo yitol, you shouldn't take it. Ve'im natal, kasher. But if you did, it's kasher. Now, why lo yitol? The Gemara is going to explain. But if it's outside of Yerushalayim, then lo yitol, period. You can't take it at all because I can't eat it. It's not lachem. Alta chazazit al rubo. So those are all the lachem things that we had. Now, alta chazazit al rubo. If you have this bubble-like, small, tiny, like pimple bubble-like growth on the majority of the surface of your etrog, I have to open a parenthesis here that the Rishonim talk about the top area of etrog versus the bottom half of the etrog. If you see the shape of a regular etrog, which comes to a cone on the top, basically, so from the area that the slope starts going to the top, narrowing down, that is considered chotem. That's considered the top area of etrog, which is more important to be beautiful and clean and flawless versus the bottom area, as we will discuss. But alta chazazit al ruvo, if you have this chazazit growth on the majority of the etrog, or nitla pitmato, if the pitum is taken off from the top, right? So you have to understand that etrog, the reason that we take it the way we take it, with the pitum being on the top, the Gemara says it has to be derech gedelato, as we'll see in the Gemara. And derech gedelato, even though that on the tree is backwards, the attachment to the tree, if you follow the roots, and where it's attached, really would be the okitz, which is the part attached to the tree, is on the bottom, and the pitum is on the top. The pitum is more important. Again, aligned with what we just mentioned, that the top half is more important than the bottom half. Pitum, if it's taken, is pasul the first day, because it's not nice. Now, pitum being taken, it's also another psul, which we waited for it to be discussed right now. Ulkachtem lachem b'yom harishon, which in the previous daf we darshan, the Gemara darshan, there has to be lekicha tama. You remember that? We darshan that you need all 4 species, and even if you're missing one of them, the whole thing is pasul, right? Where do we learn that from? From the verbiage at the very beginning of the pasuk. Ulkachtem lekicha tama. It has to be a complete taking. Now, this ulkachtem also has ramifications for the etrog itself. Ulkachtem, that it has to be tam, it has to be shalem. There is a psul of chaser in etrog. And that's another unique thing that you find by etrog, that if the etrog is missing something, is chaser, is pasul. Now, this obviously is machloket rishonim, if it's bekol shehu, or is it has to be like a small coin, how chaser has to be. But according to those rishonim who say chaser is bekol shehu, anything that is missing, even if it's a little tiny bit that's on the bottom of the etrog that you can't even see until you look carefully, still the whole etrog is pasul. And that we learn from ulkachtem lekichat hama. It has to be a complete etrog. If it's missing even a tiny bit, it will be pasul. So if you are missing the pitum, if it's because of hadar, if it's because of chaser, im natal, if the pitom is taken, nitla pitmato, or niklaf, if it's peeled off. Now we'll have to discuss this niklaf, because the surface, the yellow surface of the etrog that you see, it itself has 3 different layers of skin before you get the actual fruit. There is what looks like the glaze on top. Then there is the yellowness actually underneath, which is a very thin layer. And then there's the white, thicker skin on the bottom of that. So when we say niklaf, which one are we talking about? Is it the glaze or is it the yellow part? But however you slice that, pun intended, that you have a skin peeled off of it, that's already considered pasul, because it's also missing. Niklaf nistak. Nistak is cracked, which means the entire etrog from the top to the bottom has a crack in its peel, right? And the peel has a crack going from the top to the bottom all the way. Nikav, or it became a hole inside of it, a hole that's missing. Nikav bechaser, a nekev that makes it chaser, kol shehu. Even if it's chaser kol shehu, a little missing, the whole thing is pasul. So all of these items that we said, either alta chazazit berubo, you have this pimple-like bubbles in the majority of the etrog, or the pitum was taken, or it was peeled off, or it was cracked in even one side from top to bottom. Nikaf, it got a hole in it. The chaser, if it's missing anything, even kolshu is pasul. So those are the cases that are pasul. On the other hand, alta chazazit al miuto. If this chazazit is only on the minority of the etrog, not on majority, nital ukzo, the pitom is intact, but the bottom okitz that's attached to the tree was taken. It fell off. Or nikav velo chaser, or it got a puncture in it without taking anything off of it. Like imagine if you have a very fine needle that was poked inside, it didn't take anything off by penetrating in. It's penetrated in, you took it out, it's not a neck of mefulash, it doesn't go through and through, that is kasher. Etrog hakushi. And etrog, that was the psul of tam and lachem together, and hadar. Now, etrog hakushi pasul. Etrog that comes from eres kush, and it is dark, it's almost like a black looking green, it's pasul. Vehayarok kekarti, and if you have a dark green etrog, then Rabbi Meir machshir v'Rabbi Yehuda posel. right? Rabbi Meir v'chavero halacha k'chavero, Rabbi Yehuda v'chavero halacha k'Rabbi Yehuda is, of course, halacha like Rabbi Yehuda over here, that it would be pasul. Now, this is also debatable, whether or not this is hayarok kekarti, because you have certain etrogim that their gidul is that they are this color. That's the normal color. Is it a type of etrog that it is this color because it's not ripened fully? Or is it an etrog that it is like this because that's the color of the etrog? So this will actually have a nafkamina. When you choose your etrog, do you settle for a green etrog, or should you go find one of those that are golden, nice yellow, because that would be lechatchila. That would make obviously an nafkamina, as we will discuss when we get to that. But a yarok kekarti, if you have dark green, that would be pasul. Shiur etrog hakatan. How small can the etrog be and still is kasher? Rabbi Meir omer ke'ekos. Rabbi Meir says like a size of a walnut. That's the minimum, and anything bigger than that is kasher. Rabbi Yehuda says no, it has to be bigger. Walnut is not sufficient. Walnut is pasul. It has to be minimum a size of a kabitza. And of course, again, halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda over here, ubegadol, and the maximum measurement of a etrog that still is kasher, says the Mishnah, enough that you could have big enough or small enough that you could still hold two of them in one hand, right? So it's not that big, obviously. We spoke about the reasons behind this, that we don't want it to fall, maybe because you can exchange hands and so on and so forth. We have spoken about this Gemara at length before when it came up. And says the Gemara, that's divrei Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi Omer, which is halacha. Rabbi Yossi says, afilu echad b'shtei yadav. Even if it's so big that you need two hands to hold one of them, still would be kasher. We'll see interesting surprises on this in the Gemara when we get to the maximum shiur of the etrog. Without further ado, says the Gemara. Again, there's a lot that we didn't even say. There's so much you can spend literally 1 week on this Mishnah and not be done. So much machloket rishonim and this. If you want to really cover all of them, it would be a long time, and this is a very sophisticated, filled with machloket rishonim and requirements and definitions and so on. But what we do, and we go on, we try to cover some of those in the discussion in the Gemara. Says the Gemara on top of Lamed Hey Amud Aleph, Tanu Rabbanan, Pri Etz Hadar, Etz Shetam Etzo Upiryo Shaveh. Why does the pasuk say? Have you ever thought about this? Why does the pasuk say Peri Etz Hadar? Just say Peri Hadar. The fruit has to be glorified and beautiful. Why do you have to say Peri Etz Hadar? So says the Gemara, it's coming to teach you it's a tree that Ta'am etzo priyo shaveh, that the taste of the fruit and the tree is similar. So Ave Omer is the etrog. What is that? That's etrog. That's how we know that this is etrog. Mar says, seriously? That's how you know that this is etrog? I have another option for you. You know what else Ta'am etzo priyo is shaveh? Peppers. Pilpelin. How do I know? Because the Braita. Ve'ema pilpelin kedetanya, we learned the Braita. Haya Rabbi Meir Omer. Rabbi Meir used to say this drasha, that from the pasuk that says, Mimashma shenemar, from the fact that the pasuk says, Untatem kol etz ma'achal, the full pasuk that's talking about orla, this is talking about orla, reads, Vechiktavo el haaretz, Untatem kol etz ma'achal, when you come to Eretz Yisrael, you will plant kol etz ma'achal, the fruits that are edible. Ve'araltem orlato et piryo, shalosh shanim yeh lachem arenim lo ya'achel. Says Rabbi Meir, it says, Untatem kol etz ma'achal. So if you're going to tell me in the end of the pasuk that the fruit of it is going to be orla, don't I already know that this is a fruit tree? Of course I do. If I would take the first fruit out, if I would just say, untatem kol etz, not machal, I wouldn't say edible. I would just say, untatem kol etz, ve'araltem orlato et piryo. Right? Its fruit will be orla. So I already know that you're talking about the fruit tree. So why do you have to tell me, untatem kol etz machal, a fruit tree, an edible tree? So says Rabbi Meir, it's coming to tell you, etz machal, that the etz, the wood itself is machal. It has a taste similar to that of its fruit. So says Rabbi Meir, etz shetam etzov puryo shaveh. Heve omer ze pilpelin. You know what fruit it is that the taste of the wood and the fruit is the same? Peppers, says the Gemara. Lelametra, and the Braita goes on to complete it. We already have our kasha, right? But we're just going to complete the Braita. It's coming to teach you that peppers are chayav be'orla, ve'en Eretz Yisrael chasera kerum. And Eretz Yisrael is not missing anything. We don't just have the necessities of life, but we have everything. We have everything. Eretz Yisrael is not missing a thing. So says the Gemara, you see from here that peppers could be also a runner-upper to etrog. The Gemara says no. Mishum de lo efshar. It's not possible. Hechi navid. How are you going to do it? Right? You have a little pepper, small, like a little tiny pepper. You're going to take that. The Gemara is going to go through why that's not necessarily a possibility in taking Arba Minim together, and Be'ezrat Hashem, we will continue that in the days to come.